All right, we are live. Carl Hardwick, welcome to the future of fitness, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah,
Great. It's great to be here. It's my first time on. I'm excited.
yeah,
I was gonna say it's been too long, like we've done this before, but it's been too long since we hit this point of my first time being on the show. So appreciate it, man.
yeah, yeah. It's my pleasure. I mean, OPEX has been so instrumental in my career within the fitness industry, and I got all my education, a lot of my education through OPEX. James was a coach and mentor of mine, the founder of OPEX. I still wear the same OPEX t-shirts that I've had for 8 or 9 years at the gym, and my wife's like secretly trying to retire them, but I refused to let them go. I have the old one, and it's probably getting into the weeds, but the old one said like defined athlete. Remember that
Yeah,
t-shirt?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just can't get rid of it. So
We,
anyway,
we need to send you some new ones, man.
okay. Yeah, please do. Yeah, my wife would really be appreciative. Yeah, I'm not too sure I can wear them in public anymore. I think they have their own. They might just get up and walk away. Anyway, I'm excited to have OPEX on and you. And, I have the opportunity to get to know you a little bit over the past few months. And, let's start with this, Carl, just to give some background. Maybe uh, give us your background. How did you get to be the CEO of OPEX? I know you've been in Army, been in coaching for a while. You've done a lot of different interesting things. So yeah, tell us about you, and then we'll get into the other stuff.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'll be really quick on this. I don't know if this is the most interesting part of the conversation, but
Mhm,
maybe it'll lay some
mhm,
context. So I'm originally from the Midwest. Was born in Chicago and grew up in a place called Kenosha, Wisconsin. So spent my childhood there. Played a lot of sports, and the whole story of like an athlete. Played a lot of sports, tinkered in a lot of things. Was like always interested in this thing called like uh, you know I think now it's called like self-development, but just challenging myself and just wanting to be better at a bunch of different things, and succeeded in a few and failed in a lot. Went off to college, played some college football, played a little bit of pro football, then went into the military, spent 6 years in the military. Throughout that entire time, college, well, all the way back to when I was 13, I had like this really I was really intrigued with this like whole like fitness thing. Not the
mhm,
health thing, but this fitness thing. Like using using challenges in the gym to make myself bigger, stronger, faster, and just like learning life lessons. And it's kind of weird to say that as like looking back when I was like 13, 14 years old, but that was always like a big part of my life back then. And then, I always used fitness for a means to an end, right? Like from 13 to like 21, it was always to be the best athlete that I can possibly be. Then 22 on, it was like, it was like career specific, where it was like, oh, okay, I want to be the best soldier that I can possibly be. And in my brain, I thought the physical aspect was like the most important part of that. Learned really quickly that it wasn't, but it was always something that I like tinkered with and had a lot of fun with, and just led a lot of other soldiers underneath me against. And spent 6 years, went to Afghanistan. While I was in Afghanistan, I started taking some of Charles Poliquin's online courses,
mhm.
like PICP and all of that. I was introduced to Charles, gosh, in 2007, 2008. And then that's when I was introduced to James as well. So James Fitzgerald, our founder. So I had this guy in the back of my mind that I met back in '07, '08, and then reconnected with him post Army. Well, that was latter career of the Army in about 2013. 2013. Him and I reconnected, went through all of his education. He became an instant mentor of mine. I got out of the military, spun up a bunch of gyms. So we owned three gyms in the Columbia, South Carolina area. Then spun up an OPEX gym, OPEX Columbia in South Carolina. Started doing some mentoring with OPEX. So I'm kind of like speeding through my connection to OPEX fast. I'm missing a lot, but we can unpack some of the smaller things if we need to. Was connected with Jim and James Kroll, or Jim Kroll and James Fitzgerald. During that time, Jim had just come on as I think it was like the director of operations or something like that, and then eventually became the CEO. So Jim and I grew a really great working relationship, and then eventually a personal relationship, mostly through the OPEX Gyms program. So
Cool.
spun up another 4 OPEX gyms, mentored a lot of gyms, and then eventually found my way to OPEX HQ in 2017, working here. So I took the position to be the director of operations, kind of running education, guiding James on some things, working with James, working with Jim, working in the gyms program. And then eventually, I think it was like a year later, became the COO of OPEX. And then 2020, I took over as the CEO of OPEX. So we're just talking about this before we jumped on the call. You asked, I was a CEO life, or you said something about CEO life. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't really feel like a CEO of a company. We're just, we're a small team of about 15 people, and we all get our hands dirty on a daily basis. And I'm very, 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 very involved with everything that we do, from software to education. So yeah, man, just grateful to be here, grateful to be having this conversation, and grateful to be able to say that, oh man, I make my career against trying to make people's lives better through fitness.
Yeah, that is cool, man. Great outlook and interesting background too. What position did you play in football?
I played receiver.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
a slot receiver. I'm like 5'10". I was gonna say 5'10 and a half, but I won't add the extra half. About 5'10". I was pretty fast, and I was really strong for my size and all of that. And I wasn't the greatest natural football player, but I just worked so freaking hard, man. Where it's just
Yeah.
like, I worked harder than anyone to run like a 4.5, and there's like guys running 4.4s next to me that like never did anything. And yeah, I just worked really hard, and that was kind of the position that I landed at. So played receiver / running back for a lot of years. Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And now I'm
Awesome.
coaching. I have a 13-year-old, newly
Really?
13-year-old. Yeah, man. Just celebrated. Colton is my 13-year-old. We just celebrated his 13th birthday the other day. And my wife and I just looked at each other on his birthday, and we're like, we're the parents of a teenager. That is just, but yeah, I've been coaching his tackle team for, I think he's going into his 5th year. So just having fun with it, man.
Yeah. Very cool, Carl. And so I think I was contemplating, I think it's been about 4 years since I had James on the podcast, the founder of OPEX, and maybe give us an update, like in its current iteration, what is OPEX? I know it's evolved quite a bit over the years. Yeah. So we'll start with that.
Yeah, so we used to say we're a fitness education company. Now it's it's more complicated than that. We still educate coaches, of course. That's kind of our bread and butter. But we've kind of evolved over the past few years into a technology company. In 2020, we got into building software, so building learning software and building coaching software. So now we're a company that educates coaches, and we give coaches tools via these two platforms to be the best coaches that they can possibly be. And we also have a gyms license program. So it's a group of gyms that are, implementing the OPEX method, as the OPEX methodology is meant to be implemented, like at 100% of its capacity. So we have those gyms around the world. So we're doing a few different things, but it's all pointed at like, hey, we want every individual doing their ideal version of fitness, and we want coaches leading those individuals and teaching those individuals how to be personally autonomous in their own fitness. So a coach can do that one-to-one on the floor. A coach can do that through remote coaching. A coach can do that through our platform. So we just want to give coaches the tools and the knowledge base to be able to do those things. So that's what we're really focused on right now, Eric. And I don't that hasn't really changed over the past 4 years. We've just evolved in the way that we're delivering and doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the coaching industry. I think kind of the meat of our conversation today is like, where can it be better? Right.
Mm, mm,
What is like the state of the industry? I mean, something that caught my eye right away when I looked at your guys' website was that someone probably not get this right, but 90% of coaches leave the industry after 2 years. And that's a problem. I've asked a lot of people if like on this show, do you think the training and coaching industry has fallen into the gig economy, right? Where it's something that you just do for a little while and you move on, kind of like, get your certification, you're a summer lifeguard, and then it's never going to be a
yeah.
career, right? So where do you think the state of the coaching industry is right now? And what do you think are some of the significant challenges that face it?
Yeah, it's challenging for me to like, we keep a pulse on like, what's going on? What are people talking about? What are people doing? What are people excited about? What language are others using? But we just don't get too caught up in what the industry is doing per se. So I don't want to come out and say like, well, this is the problem, right? With what everyone else is doing. Rather, I'll say this is the problem that we're trying to solve, if that's fair.
Sure.
The problem that we're trying to solve is everyone has different outcomes, right? Like we're trying to come up with this like synergistic, clear outcome as to what is the whole point of this? What's the point to focus on your own health, your own vitality, your fitness? why lift those weights? That remind me of like the Bill Parcells things. Why lift all those weights? Why lift weights? Why do aerobic work? Why do anaerobic work? Why challenge yourself physically, right? So we're like asking ourselves those questions, and we're trying to clearly give that answer to coaches that we educate and coaches that we have conversations with. So, it's challenging though, right? Because if you ask 10 different, let's call it like industry experts, they might give you 10 different answers. So it's like, how do we get to a point where we all have the same or a very similar answer, right? It's like at the end of the day, it's like this whole fitness thing is a thing because we're fatter, sadder, and sicker than we've ever been, right? We're fatter, sadder, and sicker. Now we look at why is that though? Honestly, I think it's I don't want to get into like the agricultural stuff and the technological advances because all that stuff is really good, right? Those are realities. But with those realities, there come some consequences, right? There's trade-offs to everything. An example that we chatted through in our last CCP call on Tuesday, I gave an example. I was like, okay, why are we doing this thing? Why is this fitness thing important? Why do we have to convince people that this should be in their foundational belief system, that they should challenge themselves and move their bodies every day and nourish their bodies? And what I came to, I was like, hey guys, we have to realize something. 2,000 years ago, we had to move our bodies to survive, right? So let's give a very clear example that's not polarizing, like simple. 2,000 years ago, someone had to grab 2 buckets. They had to walk, let's call it 5 miles to a well. And then they had to fill those buckets. And then they had to yoke carry those buckets 5 miles back to their home so that their family wouldn't die of dehydration. And then they had to go and do something very similar, maybe walk to a market or farm or whatever the case is to feed their family so their family wouldn't die of starvation. Today, right, and this isn't a bad thing, so I'm not demonizing this, but today we go to Whole Foods or Sprouts or Fry's, the local grocery store, and we just like grab our food. We pay for it really quick. We put it in our carts, or we put it in our cars and we drive back home. Or we just pull out our phone and we like order up some Instacart and have it delivered directly to our home, right? So not even getting into like what the food is that we're eating and the agriculture advances and that allows us to eat this highly processed and all of foods and all that stuff. I'm going to focus more on like the lack of physical movement and what we'll now call exercise.
Sure.
So 2,000 years ago, if we didn't do those things and move our bodies, the consequences were dire and right in front of our faces. We would die, right? Today, what is the consequence of not moving our bodies? The consequence of not moving our bodies is metabolic disease, comorbidities, obesity, blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't happen immediately. That happens over a long, long period of time, right? For some, it's like decades of living in an unhealthy lifestyle and not moving their bodies. So the consequences of not moving our bodies 2,000 years ago, like it would be obvious. It's like, what do you mean? Why would I exercise? I need to go out and just like a great book is a book called Exercised by Daniel Lieberman. I don't know if you've read that book.
I have
Great
not.
book that kind of gives you a different perspective on what this whole exercise thing is. And his thing is like, we're so exercised about exercise. We just worry about it a lot. And the reason is because we have to, because I can sit here on Zoom, talk to you. You're 1,500 miles away ish, I think. We could have a great conversation. We can hang up. I can walk downstairs, grab some food out of my refrigerator, come back here, do some more work, have more conversations. And then I can do that 7 days a week and never have to like go out and run, go out and hike a mountain, go down to my garage and lift some weight. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to do those things. So that was a very long and drawn out way of saying we need to move our bodies and we need to challenge our bodies every single day because that's what our bodies are meant to do. Our bodies are meant to exert energy, right? Our bodies are meant to exert energy and we have no reason to do it. Most people have no reason to do it on a day-to-day basis. So starting foundationally there, it's like, okay, what is this industry? Just looking at exercise specifically. I'm not even going to get into nutrition and lifestyle and all that stuff. Exercise specifically, we're here as fitness coaches to bring that conversation to our clients and have that conversation with them where it's like, no, it's not about you losing the last 10 pounds. It's not about you eventually getting a 6-pack. It's not about you back squatting 450 pounds. Like, you need to do this because you're meant to exert energy. So let's start moving our bodies every single day. And then once we get there, now let's talk about the more complex and specific stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like the outcome in this industry should just be to get people off the couch, out of their computer chairs, and moving their bodies. And then we can get specific into like what that means. But foundationally, I think everyone would agree with that. So imagine, Eric, if like all of these industry experts were like, that's the aim. Instead, and we've fallen into this trap as well. We used to talk about like performance and serious talk to me. Performance and rowing a better 5K and all that. We still talk about that stuff anymore because that's not the lowest hanging fruit. Imagine a world that everyone just simply moved their body 7 days a week. Oh my God. Like, I can't even imagine that world because I think it would be a much different and more vital world, not even from like a physiological, physical health standpoint, but as well from like an emotional health and mental health standpoint as well. So I don't want to say that that's the problem in the industry, but that's the problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah. I mean, there's an overcomplication. You and I are discussing that. And like what you're talking about is so relevant to me right now because as we're recording this, I'm looking out my window and they're building a house next door in the lot. So there's framers. And 6 days a week, these guys are hustling, right? And I'm like sitting in my little aquarium here in my office, right? Just like sitting in my computer, like almost like not envious, but in some ways I am. I'm like, God, I wish I moved that much all day. Like maybe I should just, change maybe I need a career change at this point.
Yeah.
Like even, when I owned my gym, I felt like I was sitting a lot because I was always doing desk work and things, but I was still moving. Like, it was a different thing. Like I was walking around, doing a lot of different things. I was just more active. And I think, I call this the coach's journey. I've talked to a lot of people who have been on this show before and a lot of people personally too. It's like, I use my own example to illustrate. When I first started, my coaching career was CrossFit, right? And within like a year, I gobbled up some certifications, right? I hadn't yet met James. So I was perfectly content and confident in saying that CrossFit plus paleo could solve every problem known to man, right? Like people just need a CrossFit and eat paleo. That's it, right? Like, so obesity, done. Sickness, done. Nuclear war, never a concern anymore, right? Like all these things, I'm like, I could do it. And then I started to learn more and I met James. I started to go down these rabbit holes, met a lot of different other mentors as well. I'm like, I don't know shit. So it was like 4 or 5 years of just like me, like, we got to burn it all down and start over again.
Yeah.
And then eventually I got to a point where like, you know what? Like people just need to move more. They need to sleep better, need stronger like social connections and, drink more water and just eat a little healthier. And that's like a lot of people I've talked to, like Kelly Starrett and Rob Wolfs and people like that. They kind of come back to this whole thing like, no, we just got to get people to move more, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's it, So it's like we have this overcomplication within our industry of that. I mean, when I say that overcomplication, like what does that stir up in your mind?
Oh, a lot, man, a lot. And I don't want to come off as like I am like, I get the most jazzed up and excited about like new technologies and ways that we can improve in the way that we're doing things. I don't want to come off as if I'm like stone age, like, oh, we just need to do things how we've always done them. I don't think that that's the case. I think we just have to understand our intentions behind things. When I think about overcomplication in this industry, I think that it's a malalignment in what the North Star is and where we're trying to move people. Because let's be honest, right? Like a lot of overcomplication in fitness is so that you can pull wool over people's eyes so they pay you money for something, right? It's like, oh, you want the best training program in the world? I'm the only one that can give you that because I have the knowledge that not anyone else has. It's like we talked about before we hit record again, like the knowledge and wisdom thing, right? It's like, that's what I would call knowledge, right? Like a new paper comes out and it says that there's an incremental difference in training full body versus upper lower splits, even when volume is equated. It's like, that's knowledge, right? It's like, okay, cool. That's pretty insignificant. That's not life changing. But what is the wisdom behind that? It's like, lift weights or take your body through your muscles through something that is taking them out of homeostasis, breaking down muscle tissue. And then you're going to be healthier tomorrow. Your muscles might grow bigger. You might grow more muscle, whatever the case is, right? So I think we take a lot of those knowledge pieces and we make them really complicated. I think sometimes even like we're not doing it intentionally. A lot of the times we're doing it to like prove our own worth as a coach and our own knowledge and all of that. So I think overcomplication is like cool for people to tinker with, like in the lab. But I don't think it works at all when you start to bring that stuff to the market. I'm a huge proponent and believer that people want to do things and hear things that make sense to them, right? So it's like, how do we say things that connect and make sense to someone so that they start moving every single day, if that is the North Star, right? Like you hit it when you were like saying, hey, I'm sitting in this room and I'm looking out the window and I'm seeing those people move. And then I went through this thing of like paleo and CrossFit and it's going to solve everything. And then at the end of the day, it burned everything down. It's like, I think people just need to move every single day.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think like when you say that to people, they're going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. Right. That makes sense. It's funny, Eric, I'm putting together, we're starting a wellness ministry at our church, and I'm running the fitness side of it. So it's like an 8-week workshop / class / series where I'm just going to be in front of a room and like teaching the congregation on like what is health and fitness and how can you build autonomy in your own health and fitness. And people are excited, man. Like this thing got booked up in like hours, and everyone thought that they were going to get like, oh, what's the fitness program you're giving us? Like, you're just going to give us the answer, blah, blah. And it's like, no. We're going to spend 8 weeks and I want to teach you how to do this for yourself, right? We're going to spend 1 week. We'll bring everything back to like exercise and blah, blah, blah. But we're going to spend 1 week out of these 8 weeks talking about resistance training and aerobic work and all that stuff. But there's so many other things that you need to understand to realize the importance behind, taking your body through like intentional contractions on a daily basis and breathing a little bit heavier than you usually breathe for an amount of time throughout the week and all that. So it's challenged my mind to like speak to, because I'm so used to speaking to coaches and like teaching coaches, like, here's the message that you need to deliver to your clients. So it was just, I was unbelievably grateful for the opportunity to be able to like speak directly to 20, 30, 40, 70-year-olds, right? Like filled in a room and just being able to talk about health, wellness, and fitness for 8 weeks. So it's challenged my idea of like simplification and the language that I use and how to convey a message to someone and how to connect that message to that person, their goals, what they're struggling with, what their experiences are and all of that. So I think the answer is simple at the end of the day, but I think that the complicated part is connecting people to the simple answers.
Yeah, well said.
I don't think so. I didn't even answer your question. I don't think overcomplication is helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's I think that's been a thing, I've said on this numerous times or just in general, but we tend to overcomplicate things to, I guess, prove the necessity of our roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And justify the price that we charge, when really, if we were just more authentic and open and just helping people go along the path of more movement, more health, better relationships, that thing like that. But it's a hard thing to package up and monetize. And that's the challenge, right? It's much easier to sell a 6-week challenge, dude. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
It's much easier to sell a 6-week challenge than like a 3-year journey.
Going back to intentions, we had a good conversation with a group of coaches on this as well. So where we stand is we're like, you need to teach your clients everything you know. That should be your goal. And we tell coaches that, and they look at us with this blank stare like, what do you mean? If I teach the client everything that I know, why will they need me? Right. And I'm like, exactly, right? Like if you actually want to have impact, you need to teach people to be autonomous in their own health and fitness. And they're just like, well, that sounds great, but I'm going to be out of a job. And I'm like, okay, let's look at it this way, right? Like what is your average length of stay for every client that you coach? And usually it's blank stare. And I'm like, okay, it's probably about 13 months if you're doing a really good job. Like your average client is with you for around 13 months. And then I ask the question, how long do you think it will take you to teach a client everything that you know so that they can be autonomous in their health, wellness, and fitness? Like, I don't know. And I'm like, let's say it's about 2 years. Imagine if when anyone comes to you and they're like, hey, Eric, like, man, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I feel sick. I have no energy. I'm fatter than I used to be. And I don't like the way I look or feel and blah, blah, blah. Imagine if instead it was like, oh, I'm going to turn this thing around for you in 6 weeks. If you're just like, hey, what I do is, the intention or my outcome is to teach you everything that I know and essentially hold your hand for an amount of time and then allow you to go out in the world and do this thing for the rest of your life and also teach your family, your neighbors, your friends, everything that we built here together. I think they would be at least intrigued with that. Right. And then they're like, well, what does that look like? It's like, okay, well, I think that this is going to take us about 2 years based on where you're at. And they're like, that seems like a pretty long time. You're like, well, in that time, I'm still coaching you. I'm giving you, nutrition programs, fitness programs, lifestyle programs, the whole nine. But there's like this consultation process that's going along with this where I'm teaching you how to I'm telling you the whys behind it. I'm understanding what your problems are and I'm connecting what I'm giving you to what you want your outcomes to be. Right. And they're just like, okay, right. Then you sign that client up and you sign them up for, let's say it's a 12 to 24 month contract. And you're just like, this is our defined outcome. That client would have left in about 13 months if you're doing a good job anyway. But now you're setting some like awesome expectations up front and you're actually going to have an impact on their lives. Because most people that leave in 13 months, you're just feeding them program designs and you're giving them like macros or nutrition plans. And then they're just like, I'm kind of disengaged. So I'm going to go and do something else in 13 months. But they didn't learn anything, right? They learned how to perform the movements that you gave them and so on and so forth. But they didn't like learn anything foundationally. So if we really want to have impact, I'm a huge believer that we have to teach people how to do it on their own. And I don't think that that's going to kill the profession, right? There's 8 billion people in the world, right? It's like there's plenty of people that need health and fitness. So I don't think we're going to teach people out of our own jobs and professions. And when that client sits down with you at month 16 and they're like, hey, Eric, man, like I'm firing you today, but I love you and you really changed my life and you had a drastic impact on me. And I can't wait to share all of this with like my friends, families, kids, blah, blah, blah. It's like that would be a really good feeling. Right. I don't want to like speak for everyone listening, but I think for me, that would be a really good feeling. Like I would feel really good about that client firing me because now they can go out and do it on their own versus an email saying, hey man, with my contract up, I think I'm going to kind of cut loose here and go do this other thing. Right. So I know it's like perspective and I'm like, I'm kind of known as like the optimist, but I think if we approached it in that way, I think the coach would be more satisfied and fulfilled in what they're doing and what they're teaching their clients. And I think we would actually have an impact on what's going on. And then the last point on that, Eric, would be going back to like the technological advances and all that. Like if we looked at like a chart, an XY axis chart, and we're like, okay, on the vertical axis, there was like, it was like health outcomes, right? And then on the horizontal axis, it was like years, right? So it's like 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020. And we like had this idea of like, okay, what were technological advances from the 1980s all the way to the 2020s? If we like put that as a dotted line, it would be going up like that, like like wearables, the amount of data we're able to pull. It's astounding. It's awesome. I love it. But we have to look at health outcomes. How health outcomes are doing this, dude. Like objectively, they're going down, right? So I believe that the missing link is connection to technology, connection to what people are trying to accomplish in this whole like health and fitness thing. I just don't think that the more technologically advanced and the more nuance we get and wearable data is going to have, well, who cares what I think? It's not having a positive impact on health outcomes in the United States specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, man. And it's hard to argue with. I want to talk about technology too, because CoachRx, I actually don't know a ton about it. I know it's been around for a bit. You and I talked at, I think it was Connected Health and Fitness when we connected
Yeah.
earlier this year, and you were showing me a little bit about it. But why did you guys start that? Like, what was the impetus for CoachRx? Maybe tell us, like, what it does now.
Yeah, for sure. So CoachRx, just to set a context. So CoachRx is our platform that coaches can design training programs, scale their businesses inside of, and most importantly, coach their clients and have this impact. Kind of the reason why we created this thing or built this thing. Quick story. So Casey Jenks. So Casey is, I don't know if you know Casey, Eric.
Yeah, he was on this podcast earlier when it was Fitbot.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so we were deeply involved with Casey as he was developing Fitbot. He was an OPEX remote coaching client, actually. So Casey, developer, really smart dude, started getting program designs from OPEX, and he was getting them through like emails and Excel docs. And he's just like, bro, like there has to be a better way to do this. This was like 2014, 2015. He's like, there has to be a better way to do this. So he started creating this platform called Fitbot, which was just like, there was very few platforms like it, if any, at that time, especially for the way that our coaches coach. So we worked really closely with Fitbot. James actually invested in the company, and they just had a great amount of success. So like all of our CCP students, like we had a great partnership with them where we said they all were doing the OPEX method and coaching their clients through individual design in Fitbot, which eventually turned into True Coach. I think that was like 2018, 2019. They rebranded to True Coach. Casey sold the company in 2020. So just around the COVID time, he exited. So with that exit, obviously, the investment was over, we got paid out in that investment, but we had no more connections with them. So with that loss of connection also came a loss of influence on the roadmap. So it's not like we were like in the back end saying like, you need to do this or you need to do that, but they took our thoughts and advice and all that, and they implemented them. So it was like a beneficial relationship on both sides. So 2020, they sold. And that is the time that I took over here at OPEX in the position that I'm in now. And it was a no-brainer to me. I'm like, guys, we need to put time, energy, and resources into building our own platform. Dude, I had no experience in that, like zero experience. But I'm like, how hard could it be? So we built it. So that was we started development in, let's call it July. And we launched like 3 or 4 months later. So we turned that around pretty quick. So we created out of necessity, like we needed something. So we created it. We launched it internally to our coaches only. Gosh, bless our coaches' hearts. They stuck with us. It wasn't very good when we first launched it. But hey, we took a lot of advice and we refined and made it better. And I will confidently say it's the best coaching platform for one-to-one coaching in the world right now. So we developed it. We went live public outside of just CCP coaches about 8 months after we did the initial launch. I was like, I need to bring Casey on. The dude is unbelievably intelligent and he has experience and he's way smarter than me in this stuff. So we brought Casey on middle last year. So Casey's now our CTO. So we're building this thing. We're putting a lot of time, energy, effort, resources into CoachRx. And I love to, like, I think we can leverage technology to become better coaches. So that's what we're standing against with CoachRx. And we have some really cool things launching. When will this go live?
This like late spring, late spring.
Okay. So we'll probably be live with this by this time, but we would have already announced it. But we've been working on AI like very aggressively in the background over the past year and a half. Well, since last November 2022. And we're about to launch our coaching assistant, which is called RxBot inside of CoachRx. And this thing is pretty cool, man. So it's built on about 3 million characters of OPEX Fitness principles. So we built our own knowledge base, and this thing is looking at our knowledge base and designing training programs based on our principles. And so if I'm coaching you in CoachRx, I'm going to assess you. I'm going to consult with you. I'm going to put goals and priorities and your structural balance table from all the metrics and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is going to be inside of this. So RxBot is personalizing this program based on this foundational knowledge of the OPEX knowledge base, as well as looking at all of your inputs, right? This is Eric, his age. He needs to work on this in the contraction continuum. He needs to be doing this, not doing that. His goals are this, and it's building automated programs based off of that. So we're in like the late testing phases with this. So we'll be launching in the next few weeks, and we're unbelievably excited about it. But and it's just going to save the coach so much time, because it was important for us to build this natively So not only are the programs going to be designed, but it's just a button click and all this stuff is just going to get pushed to your client's calendar and end up in their app. So when we were going to initially launch, because we wanted to it was mostly me. I wanted to hurry, right? And against that bad judgment, we didn't, because it was like, okay, a chat bot, maybe this. But it was always important to me to say, like, okay, this thing needs to end up on the calendar to actually be helpful for the coach, because they can go to ChatGPT and Gemini and the million other AI platforms that are being launched today to do that stuff. So it was really important that this was built on our knowledge base, use client data, and ended up on the client calendar. So we're working on that, about to launch that. But the reason why we're doing that is not so that a coach can like use AI to like coach their client and then they can go and like drink a Mai Tai on the beach. When we launch this, and the language around this is allow artificial intelligence to do the stuff that you would have done anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And hey, it might be able to actually do it better than you, right? I know that's like controversial for a lot of coaches because they're so connected to their program design. Let it do those things so that you can spend more time building a relationship with your client, right? So don't like save that time to go off and do something else that has nothing to do with coaching. Reallocate the time that artificial intelligence gives you back to more connect with your client, connect them to their outcomes, the program design, the lifestyle design, the nutrition design, all of that stuff. And I believe wholeheartedly that is going to improve your business metrics, right? Like retention, your compliance percentages, how many touch points per week you have with that client, which we track very granularly in CoachRx as well. We just think that communication thing is so important. So we want to not automate, Eric, but like give you a program design assistant so that you can reallocate that time to other places. And communication is just like bread and butter, I believe, for coaches. You have to communicate with your people. You have to communicate with them to say, hey, you're doing this because of XYZ. You need to communicate via education, all of those things. So we're really excited about that right now.
Yeah, amazing, man. I couldn't agree more that it's a really good direction to go in, because I look at my own career, and programming took so much time, man. And it was not, for the amount of time that goes into it, given the amount of impact that it has on the client's results, it's really not, it doesn't add up, right?
No.
It just doesn't. Like I would spend, and here's the thing, right? I would spend, it turned out just being like an hour. It would start with like an hour on Sunday morning, right? And then it turned into like all day. It was just like, from, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then I'm like, then you go into Monday and you're like, I feel like I just never even got a break, right? So even just from like the
then your client's like, oh, well, I'm going to miss this week, or I'm going to do Monday. You're like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. For real.
Yeah. My kid's sick. I can't make it in this weekend. Oh God.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's not, as much as we'd love to think that our program design is the difference maker, it does help, but the relationships and the environment and the community that we provide to people is really what keeps them around and gets them getting results. So I think I think coaches need to kind of just pump the brakes sometimes and just separate yourself from the program design. It's not who you are as a coach. It's just one component, and it's probably the thing that takes up the most time with the least amount of ROI into the actual client results. That's just my opinion, but curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah,
too.
no, I totally agree. And as we walk through like the business part of CCP on our calls, I always start with this statement that's like, guys, because the biggest question that we get, it's like, how much do I charge? Right? It's like, how much do I charge? How do I make a living off of this thing? How do I create something that people want? Right? And I always go back to this statement of like, your value is uniquely determined by the things that you uniquely provide, right? If me and Eric are giving the exact same product in the exact same way, using the exact same language, the customer is going to look at what? Who's cheaper, right? Because if the customer thinks that they're getting the exact same value, they're going to say, okay, how can I pay as little as possible for that? So with that being said, and I think that's just like general, like, anyone with any amount of business acumen would be like, yeah, that's generally correct. So assuming that's generally correct, I think that we could also say that very few clients uniquely value great program design. I think all program design should be principally sound, right? Like do things that are principally sound. But so I don't want to say like program design doesn't matter, right? Like we teach a lot of program design. So obviously we believe like principally sound program design is important. But is the juice worth the squeeze, right? To make every design that you create the like in your own brain, the best thing that you've ever created? No, right? Because the client doesn't know the difference between the greatest program design in the world and a principally sound program. They don't know the difference, right? There's no difference between that. I've never seen a coach that said, I am able to keep all of my clients for an average of 36 months because I give them the best program design possible. Like I just don't see that. I don't hear that. It's usually I'm able to keep my clients around because we have a great relationship. I'm able to keep my clients around because they always know what they're aiming for, and I'm always giving them the thing that's going to get them there, right? It's more so that. So I completely agree that program design can't be our unique value proposition. Like we need to understand it, right? Like we need to understand what we're doing to create principally sound programs. But if it's our unique value proposition, I don't think that we're going to go too far unless you're working with the 0.001%, or if you're working with an Olympic athlete. That's like, hey man, I need to be refined, reverse engineered every 4 years. I need to crush, right? Different, but most people aren't working with those individuals.
Yeah. In the time, what I found in program design is we all get biased towards our own proclivities, like things, movements that we like, right? Situations we've trained through. Like it's just a human bias on it. And I've spent so much time, like, and James is my coach, of course, you can understand, like I would put together just a 12-week template, right? A split, like, and just have everything measured out perfectly throughout the dosages and timing. Everything was just perfect, right? I'm just like, oh, this is beautiful. And then what happens? Like half of it doesn't get done. Someone's traveling, right? It's like, you're like, it was just ended up being I hate to say it, not a waste of time. It's not a waste of time, but it's just not the best use of time. So I think that's really cool. And when do you said it in sometime, maybe in like the spring, you're planning on launch that?
Yeah, so we're gonna do a launch webinar / reveal here April 20 something, like 24th, 25th, something like that. So
awesome.
Yeah, by the time this goes, that'll be live.
Right on, man.
Yeah.
Last question I always ask is like, what's one of the biggest challenges you're facing right now as CEO of OPEX?
Oh, one of the biggest challenges. I'm going to repeat the question so I can think about this for a second. Man.
This is why I love this question.
Yeah. I don't feel bad with the silence. So I'm going to take some time to really think about this. I'll try to keep it under 30 seconds, but I'm going to take some time here. Okay, I got it. Biggest challenge, and this is such an internal thing that's become like more of an external thing with our people. The biggest challenge is getting people to understand why they do what they do. Man, I think that's so important, right? Like across the board. And that transcends fitness, right? Like I talk to my kids about this stuff. It's like have an intent and have a reason as to why you're doing what you're doing, right? It's like you don't have to know exactly what the outcome is going to be, but have a reason as to why you're doing what you're doing. That's the biggest challenge, is to because I just believe that so like deeply in my soul. And we do a lot of education, right? So a lot of our education, it's like it's honestly trying to convince people of something that you believe, to be honest with you, right? It's like, we have beliefs and convictions that we believe are, just deeply rooted in that like wisdom and truth. And to get people to see it for themselves is a really challenging thing, but it's unbelievable when the light bulb goes off for people. Not that we have the answers for everyone, but for them to be able to come up with the answers for themselves. So we talk about this thing like PVMVP, like what is your purpose? What is your vision? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your mission, right? What are your values? That's when it starts to get a little like, ooh, what does that even mean? What are your values and what are your principles? Like when we have those conversations with coaches, man, like it's the most challenging conversation, but it's the best thing to see like coaches sending in their final projects when they're finally done with this thing, and to read through those and just see the growth, right? So I think that's the most challenging thing. Why the heck are we doing what we're doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's, I think people who have been involved or engaged with OPEX, it's very strongly built on principles, Right. And one of the things that I think I've used a couple hundred times with clients and friends and myself is, I don't know if you guys still use it, it's a DeMartini value assessment.
Yeah.
Like that was very eye-opening for me of understanding like what are my values really, and how do you look at your values and how other people value sets, and how you looked at it from a non-judgmental way, and how that really gives incredible insights into why people do what they do. So there's a lot of real cool nuggets I got out of OPEX. But man, Carl, very excited for what you guys have coming down the pipe. I'm fired up to check it out, and I think that AI tool is exactly what the industry needs. I think you guys are nailing it. So very cool stuff. If people want to get a hold of you personally, or if there's anywhere online you'd like them to go, let them have it.
Yeah, I'll keep it personally. I'm not that engaged and involved on social media, but our team is. So at OPEX Fitness, at CoachRx, I believe it's CoachRx.app is our Instagram handle. I should know that off the top of my head. Those are places where you can connect with OPEX and CoachRx. With me personally, I'm going to give you my Instagram handle. You guys don't want to follow me. I put like family stuff on there every 3 months. But personally, like if you guys are, want to dig into something, or you have a question that we weren't able to get to, feel free to email me at carl@opexfit.com. So we'll keep it old school. We'll go email instead of social media.
Yeah, I love it. Some people even give away their phone numbers here, which I think is classic. Well, Carl, thanks so much, man. Really, really happy that we got this chance to catch up and chat on the podcast. And like I said, excited for what you guys are doing. So yeah, thanks for coming on, ladies and gentlemen. Carl Hardwick.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it, buddy.